1972 was a watershed year for expanding educational opportunities in this country. The educational amendments of 1972 included Title IX, now known as the Patsy T. Mink Equal Opportunity Education Act, guaranteeing educational opportunities for women and girls in federally supported educational institutions. But 1972 also saw, within the education amendments, the creation of the Basic Educational Opportunity Grant. Today we know it as the Pell Grant. It was named in honor and in recognition of the extraordinary vision and service of my colleague, my predecessor from Rhode Island, Claiborne Pell. He authored this provision. 40 years later, we can see how these two key changes to our educational laws have transformed our nation and transformed the aspirations of millions of Americans. It's also a good time to reflect on the challenges that remain and to renew our commitment to fulfilling the promise of opportunity represented in the education amendments of 1972. Senator Pell's vision was that no student with the talent, drive, and desire should be denied the opportunity for a post-secondary education solely because of a lack of financial resources. Pell Grants have opened the doors to a college education for millions of Americans. In the 1973-74 academic year, the first year which was really effective, 176,000 Pell Grants were awarded. In the school year that began in the fall of 2010, that number grew to over 9.6 million. Pell Grants constitute approximately 23% of all federal student aid, which includes grants, loans, and work-study programs. The Pell Grant is the cornerstone of our federal student aid programs. For needy students, it is the foundation for making college affordable. Unfortunately, reduced state support for higher education and rising college costs have eroded that foundation. In 1976, the maximum Pell Grant was $1,400, which was enough to cover 72% of the cost of attendance at a public four-year college. In 2010, the maximum Pell Grant was $5,500, which was only enough, ironically, to cover 34% of the cost of attendance at a four-year public college. We've seen an erosion of the buying power of the Pell Grant. If we were matching the effort that he initiated in the 1970s, we were providing more opportunity and more support for college students across this nation. Senator Pell understood that grant aid was critical for low-income students and families. The goal was to minimize the need for loans. And frankly, back in the 1970s, most young people with a Pell Grant, working through the summer, working extra hours they had to during the academic year, could pay their way through school, leave school, without huge, huge debts. Today, regrettably, there are students graduating from schools with $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 worth of debt because the Pell Grants haven't kept up, because college costs have accelerated, and because they've been forced to borrow. Today, low-income students, middle-income students rely heavily on student loans to pay college, and we're seeing another burden. And frankly, this ripples throughout our economy. In the 1970s and 1980s, if you left college with owing a few $1,000s, you could pay that off very quickly. So by your late 20s, you were ready to settle down, to buy the house. Today, we have a generation of students that are struggling with debt that might take them 10 or more years to pay off effectively so they can begin to buy the home, to settle down, to do the things that are so important to our overall economy. Unless we are able to come to an agreement over the next several days, we also face the prospect of seeing the rate on these student loans double by July 1st. That would deal another blow to moderate and low-income families. Now, Leader Reid has proposed a very reasonable compromise. I hope that compromise is going to be followed up. I'm hopeful that my colleagues, my Republican colleagues, can use this opportunity not only to continue to keep the lending rate low for Stafford loans, but renew our pledge and our commitment to the Pell Grant. It would be ironic to see on the 40th anniversary of the Pell Grants a further undermining of the ability of middle and low-income Americans to go to college. In fact, this should be the opportunity to do much more. Senator Pell's words ring true today, as true as when he spoke them in 1995, in one of the last years of his tenure in the United States Senate. In his words, as I have stated on many occasions, few things in life are more important than the education of our children. They are the living legacy that we leave behind, and their education determines the future of the American nation. He continued, every day families are making decisions about sending their children to college. Certainly one of, if not the major obstacles they face is how to pay for college. The loan is their last resort. It provides the extra but necessary money they must have after exhausting their own resources and obtaining any grants for which their children might be eligible. Increasing the amount their children owe after graduation may well place the dream of a college education beyond their reach. That, to my mind, would be a tragedy of truly immense proportions. Senator Pell was right. Increasing student debts, especially during these difficult economic times, would be a tragedy for students, their families, and our nation. I urge my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, on our side of the aisle, all of my colleagues, to work together to prevent an increase in the student loan interest rate from doubling on July 1st. And that would indeed be a fitting tribute to Senator Pell on the 40th anniversary of the Pell Grant.